to measure your cover paper or book cloth, how to trim the edges and their corners, and how to build yourself a little jig to help you with cutting perfect corners every time. Hi, I'm Joanna, and welcome back to my missredfox paper art channel. It's all about bookbinding and paper crafts for beginners here. First of all, how large should your cover paper or book cloth be to fit on your book board and wrap around its edges too? I usually cover my boards in paper and use book cloth only for the hinges, but sometimes I also use prepared fabric for the covers. You can watch my videos about making a hinged cover for a Japanese binding and about preparing fabric for covering the boards. I'll put the links in the description below. My personal rule of thumb to measure my cover paper or fabric is that I leave an edge of about 1.5 to 2 centimeters all around my board that I want to use for the cover. So let's say if my board is 9 by 13 centimeters, then my cover paper would be around 12 by 16 to 13 by 17 centimeters. And by the way, since we are talking about measurements, my end paper will be smaller than my board, smaller than my pages, but large enough to cover the turn-ins of the cover paper. So I don't see the back cover end paper, this one, when I open the book. When I open a notebook, I only want to see the pages and the edge of the turn-in cover paper or fabric, but not the back end paper. For notebooks that I make over and over again, like my travel journals or my coptic notebooks, I have templates that I use to cut my cover paper for my pre-cut boards, so I don't have to calculate my paper size each time. So this would be the first option when measuring the cover material. Measure and cut your board at 1.5 to 2 centimeters on each side, so add in total 3 to 4 centimeters to the width and height of your board, and then cut your paper. For larger books, I use a turn-ins edge of 2.5 to 3 centimeters on each side. These rulers are each 1.5 centimeters wide, so I can cut accordingly and use them as a guide as well. Second option would be to spread glue on your board, place it on your paper or cloth, and then use a ruler and cut the edges around. I'll show you. The problem with this method is more time passes by before you have finished folding and gluing your edges, so your turn-ins, before you can start gluing the end paper, so the board could warp during this time. This is why I prefer the first option. By using a template, I can place it on the front of the cover paper and thus can choose the best cutout where I like how the pattern looks like, and I have plenty of time to cut without having glue on my board, etc. This is especially essential for me when I cut maps and the cutout is important. I went a step further and made myself templates for my cover paper for the travel and gardening journals, where I mark the places where the elastic bands will be placed and the edges that will be turned in two, so I can have even more of an overview and choose the best spot on the paper, especially for my front covers. This template would ideally be made of a clear material like acrylic, so you can see the pattern beneath, But I have to order that, so a DIY cardboard template is good too and much better than nothing. It is not so important to have a look at your pattern paper and choose your cutout when your pattern is quite wild or small, like here, but quite important for obviously structured patterns like here, or those with an obvious direction like maps, or like here. In this case, I would say that the middle of my board, which I can mark on my template, is aligned perfectly with a vertical line of my paper, like here. So it can be symmetrical after I glue the turn-ins. It's also important to have a look at your pattern when you use an elastic band to close your notebook, because that would cover a part of the pattern and act like kind of an edge itself. So you'd eventually wish to align your main motif between the left edge of your notebook and the elastic band. And this is especially important when you have some text here. After your cover paper is trimmed in the size you need, you glue on board on it and you must cut the corners. As I've explained in other videos too, you must cut the corners of your cover paper or cloth, otherwise you'll have too much material at the corner and it will be too bulky. If you cut your paper too close to the corner of the board, you won't have enough material to cover the corner, like this. You can see that your corner is not covered. And if you cut too far away or not at all, you'll have too much material at the corner and the corner will be too bulky. So ideally, you'll cut the corner of the cover paper in a 45-degree angle at a specific distance from the board corner to get a nice, clean overlap of your turn-ins. The rule of thumb is that you measure your board thickness, multiply that by 1.5, and this is the distance that you need. So if your board is 2 mm thick, like this one, you'll cut at a 3 mm distance from the board corner. You can either hold a ruler or draw a line between the corner of your board and the corner of your paper, measure and mark your distance on it, so in this case 3 mm, then cut at that distance. This takes more time than other methods. Or you can eyeball it and then cut. But this won't be exact. Sometimes I do this, but then it's definitely not going to be even and the same on all sides, so better measure before cutting. You could of course buy yourself one of these 3D printed jigs like this one or this one. Most are quite robust, or you have a 3D printer yourself and can print a jig. But if you buy them, they usually come in only some standard sizes. So what you can do, you can use cardboard to make a jig for a specific board thickness and use it to cut your corners fast, easy and exact every time. These DIY corner jigs have the advantage that you make them exactly for the board thickness you need. They are kind of an essential tool in bookbinding if you don't want to guess and cut by hand each time, so I can only recommend them. To make a corner jig, take a piece of cardboard, ideally with the same thickness of the cover boards, and this is 10 by 7 centimeters. The size of the cardboard for the jig doesn't actually matter. You just need it large enough to be able to handle it and to cover the complete corner of your material. Find and mark the middle of the long edge. So 5 centimeters here. Then mark the distance that you need on it. So let's say 3 millimeters if this is a 2 millimeter board. And you need the jig for a 2 millimeter board. So I measure 3 millimeters here and mark the line parallel to the edge. Then use a set square or a quilter square, like these ones, or a sewing ruler, so something with a large enough right angle. Align it properly. So this line is the line that you marked here. And draw a right angled triangle with the corner at the point that you marked, and then cut this out. This piece of cardboard is quite fragile now and can break easily here, so we must reinforce it. I do this by gluing another piece of cardboard on it, like here. This is 10 by 2 centimeters, and I mark the edges here. And then glue only this part. See that they are aligned properly? And then I will cut these corners away, but this is not a must. To use this as a guide, you just have to place it at the corner of your board and cut the excess paper along this line. Like this, your cut will be placed at the perfect distance for the specific board thickness and definitely in a 45-degree angle. And then you just put some glue on your cover paper and turn this side, and then you just push this little piece inside with your finger or with your bone folder, and then you can glue the other side. And then your corner is perfectly formed. Of course, you do this after you cut all your 4 corners away. I like to write the thickness of the board on the jig on both sides. Since I made several of them for different board thicknesses, and like this I always know which one to use. Of course, this helps even more if you know the exact thickness of your cover board, so you either need to measure it each time using one of these tools or an electronic one. Or just write the thickness on it when you buy it on leftover pieces as well, so you don't have to measure or guess every time. And while you're at it, you could also mark the grain direction on your boards, also on leftover pieces, so you don't need to waste time finding it out when you need it. You can find a link to my comprehensive video on paper and board grain in the description below. To wrap things up, it's little things like this which will make your bookbinding process and workflow much easier, faster and more precise, so give this little DIY jig a try. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope you liked this video, and if so, please like and subscribe, and I'll be back with more videos on bookbinding and paper crafting soon. If you have any questions, just write them down in the comments and I'll answer them as fast as I can. Thank you so much.